Good morning, classmates. Good morning, ma'am. My name is Michael Roy Silva from PSED 21, and today I will report about the audience analyzing the audience centeredness. Good public speakers are the audience centeredness because it has a purpose, that is to analyze the response of the listeners, wherein not the it is not to gain uh, success of the speech, but instead it is to gain information about the listener's response. Factor of audience centeredness is to um, adapt to your listeners needs, wherein you can express express your true self, not being pretending to be someone that you don't know. Instead, be yourself and adapt to your listeners needs. Some say that effective speakers are the ones who communicates well and utilize well with their listeners, just like you're talking to a friend, just a longer conversation. Identification. What is identification? Identification is to seek your purpose in your specific speech, wherein you will prepare and prepare your presentation for your listeners. Your classmate as an audience. What is your classmate as an audience? Your classmate as an audience is a perfect example like the training, like a training ground wherein you will express your speech as if you're speaking to your think about your classmates as your listeners in your public speech. It is a very good example of a practice or training ground for your speech. Psychology as an audience. What is psychology as an audience? This is an example of what we hear from the speakers is what we adapt to the speakers insight of his speech, wherein if you say something in your speech that the listener will respond quickly, because that is in our nature. When we listen to someone who is speaking, we tend to listen and adapt to that speaker. Some negative factor of that speech is the unavoidable the listener's attention, wherein we cannot avoid that the listener will eventually not listen because your speech is not that interesting to them. So we need to pay close attention on what the listeners needs and adapt to their personal insight of your speech. Egocentric. It is the one of the factors that you need to learn, because there are people who has more experience than you. You need to how to avoid resolve it is to grasp your message or learn from your listeners, so that they will listen and uh, adapt to your message. Like you need to give uh, a perfect example from your listeners' experience, and you need to like communicate with them in order to have a good a good speech. Graphic analysis. It is one of the ways that a speaker can analyze the listener's point of view, wherein you need to look at the demographic traits such as gender, sex, and etc. The demographic audience analysis is mainly focuses on the age, sex, religion, group membership, such as etc. See, a useful tool to analyzing your audience, but be aware that you need to avoid stereotyping. What is stereotyping? Stereotyping is what the only thing that you need to avoid, because the meaning of stereotyping is assuming something that you don't have assurance of. Example, you are assuming that every people in that specific group are the same or alike. Here are some factors to remember. First up is age. Think of it as people in different generations are not the same, because we do not vote the same people, and we do not buy a food that we are commonly used of buying. Example, you usually buy in the 7-Eleven store a smoothie, then your brother really likes the hot dog. So we think of it that you are a product of your own world. Next up is gender. You need to avoid separating the two genders. Instead, you need to adapt to their needs to avoid negative impact of your listeners. Next up is the sexual orientations, wherein do not discriminate someone or avoid discriminating a, for example, a gay or a lesbian or anything like that. Avoid it. A good audience centeredness is and think of your words before you use it. Next up is the racial, ethnic, and culture background, wherein you need to avoid discriminating. For example, you have a listener wherein he is from Indonesia or Africa, wherein he does not what do you call this? He does not speak English very often, and you suddenly discriminate him. That will affect your speech and give a negative response from your listeners. Be aware that you need to be you need to avoid discriminating other cultural group or ethnic group. And especially religion, you do not discriminate or use a religion as a basis of your speech. Avoid it as much as possible, because not all people have the same religion. Some has Catholic, Roman Catholic religion, but some has Muslim religion. So you need to avoid using a religion type of speech. You need to be aware that every people are not alike. Lastly is the group membership, wherein think of your speech that can relate to some to a specific group, wherein you need to have a perfect communications with them. That is all for my report. Thank you for listening.